This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's tax season, and we're all a bit tired of numbers. But here's one you need to hear. $16.5 billion. That's how much the IRS flagged for possible identity fraud last year. Now here's a good number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed. Save up to 40% your first year at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Hello, I'm Wendy, and that's Beth.
Hello.
And we would like to take a moment to welcome new listeners. So welcome, Buiti Binafi and Bienvenidos Bitches to Fruitloops, Serial Killers of Color.
Fruitloops Serial Killers of Color is a weekly podcast hosted by us, a multiracial, multi-generational set of BFFs. How did we get here? Well, when we realized that podcasts like ours about marginalized perpetrators and victims with hosts like us didn't exist, we just decided to do it ourselves.
Yes, so join us as we tell the fascinating stories of the crimes and the victims that often go untold by the mainstream media. And because context is everything, we often add in historical and cultural details of the crimes and criminals in order to get a sense of what might have led to these crimes.
We love talking about true crime, but we also use these true crime stories as an opportunity to talk about race relations, systemic racism, policing, history, and culture. We learn something new every day, and we hope that you do too. So dive into our feed and share an episode with a friend. You can expect to hear a new episode every Thursday. Oh, and be forewarned, we do sometimes use explicit language, and some of the content we discuss may be disturbing to some listeners. But we also have a lot of fun, so join us.
Hey, Fruities. Wendy here. As I record this, I am in the bathroom of an extended stay hotel. As you know, there was a shooting at my home. My family and I are on the hunt for a new one where we can live, be safe, and thrive. So thank you all for your grace and kindness and love. The sound right now isn't great, and I'm sure old Whitey's in the quote-unquote living room watching sports. So if you can hear that in the background, or kids or pets, apologies. Today's Rewind episode is part one of our coverage of the DC sniper case. Just an update, Mildred, who was one of the shooter's ex-wife and who is a really important part of the story, I feel like Malvo, I believe it was motivated by trying to hurt Mildred. And Mildred survived being in a domestic abuse situation with Malvo, even at one point losing her kids because of him. And so since then, she has been a real advocate and protecting her family and others with her work. And again, she's a domestic abuse survivor and an advocate. She's a keynote speaker. She's been on CNN. And an award-winning international and nationally recognized author. And her courage and power and resilience are just remarkable. Also, I remember the documentary I was thinking about that I couldn't remember the name of, and now I do. It's called Dishonesty, The Truth About Lies. It's very good. Get it wherever you can find it. And then this was a really interesting case to cover. I think even looking back on it, it still is. And many of us remember where we were when the DC sniper case occurred. But what many of us didn't know at the time was that there was a backstory with regard to Mildred and her children and her relationship with her ex-husband, the killer. And Mildred was really just doing everything that she could to try to get her children and herself away from him safely. Thank goodness, today we can say she's done that. And Beth and I had a time researching and discussing this case and all the things that it brought up. We recorded this show in 2018. And it was one of our earlier episodes. Since then, we've evolved. We still have our How Not to Get Murdered section. I think this tips still apply, but we've changed the language that we use when introducing that segment to say these tips are not about blaming victims, but about learning from other people's experiences. Also, Best Fiends is no longer a sponsor, but I'm on level 2700 if you're wondering. Anyway, we love you all. Love and healing energy to everyone this year. Gosh, 2025 is off to a real bang up start. As always, rest in power to the victims, their families, and their communities, and every single soul who was affected by or left in the wake of this case. Just love and light to y'all. So without further ado, here is the episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fruitloops Season 2, Episode 20. Thank you so much for listening. Fruitloops is a podcast about true crimes committed by people of color and their victims that we do not hear or know much about. Now, contrary to popular belief, not all serial killers are white. Dudes, what? There are many well-documented cases of serial killers of color, and Fruit Loops is a podcast all about them. We will take deep dives into the fascinating lives and crimes of serial killers and true crimes committed by people of color and the victims that the media and entertainment commonly leave out because the news is racist, allegedly.
And we are Wendy and Beth. She's Wendy. I'm Beth. We're not journalists, investigators, or psychologists. Just a couple of gals interested in true crime. Also, the opinions expressed in this podcast are just that, our opinions. Please send any questions or comments to fruitloopspod@gmail.com, or you can leave us a voicemail at 602-935-6294, and we may feature it on a future episode. Also, our website is fruitloopspod.com. Our Facebook page is Fruit Loops Pod, and our discussion group is Fruit Loops Pod Discussion on Facebook. We are also on Twitter and Instagram at Fruit Loops Pod.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you want to support the show, you can send us a donation on the Cash App, which you can download to your phone, or you can find online at cash.me/$FruitLoopsPod, or you can become a monthly patron through our Podbean patron page. Or if you can't help monetarily, no big deal. You can always give us a 5-star review on iTunes or anywhere else you get your podcast from. And again, be sure to share this show with your friends. So, who are we talking about today, Beth?
Today we're talking about the DC snipers, who are John Allen Muhammad, aged 41 at the time, and Lee Boyd Malvo, aged 17 at the time. Their crime spree began in February 2002 and included murders and robberies in the states of Alabama, Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Texas, and Washington. In 10 months, the snipers killed 17 people and wounded 10 others. And this topic was suggested by Maggie and Rico on Facebook, and also our boy Big Slim 22 on Instagram.
Hey, hip hop air horns to you guys, because this was a good suggestion. So we wanted to mention that we believe that in order to do this subject justice, we have to break this into 2 parts. So we'll record a part 1 this week and then part 2 next week. Also, there are so many crimes and so many details in this case. So we also want to stick to the meat and potatoes without boring the shit out of you. So we will not cover every single tiny detail. We just don't think it's fair to you. But if you're listening to this and you think there's anything important that you feel we left out, you know where to find us.
Yeah.
So how you doing?
Oh, well, this week has been kind of depressing.
Uh-oh.
What with the college admissions bribery scandal and the shooting in New Zealand.
Man.
Neither of which surprised me, unfortunately, which is probably why it's so depressing.
Oh, boy.
But the Good Fight is back on CBS All Access with their 3rd season, so that's good. And I'm looking forward to Game of Thrones coming back next month.
Yes, Lord.
With their last season. So I've been rewatching season 6 and 7 to refresh my memory. And
Same.
I just love the parts with the dragons.
Oh my God. Me too.
I need me a dragon.
How wonderful would it be to wreak havoc on all those who are out here committing some fuckery, who deserve some
fire on them.
Yes.
Dracarys.
You know what? And speaking of other really cool shows, I just finished watching The Walking Dead, and have you watched it yet? Oh, I don't want to spoil it.
They're not. I don't think I've seen the last 2 episodes, so don't spoil it.
I feel like without spoiling it, I can say don't mess with Michonne and don't mess
No.
with a mom who's trying to protect her kids. That's
Yeah.
all you need to know about these these last 2 episodes on The Walking Dead. Oh my God, I feel
All
so
right.
good watching it. This weekend was good. It was a regular weekend. We did playgrounds, we did picnics and whatnot. We ate at Chick-fil-A. And my husband and I, we have not eaten there in 11 years. I know. But they are building up this South Phoenix area, and they inserted a Chick-fil-A, lines for days, all the lines out the street from the drive-through, lines out the door from the inside part. It's so popular. And I recall when we ate there for the first time 11 years ago, it was disgusting. And then
I
after
never
that,
liked it.
yeah, we found out that they are hardcore anti-gay and donate so much money to anti-LGBTQ organizations, pray away the gay organizations. But even some of my liberal friends, liberal people that I follow online and stuff, love it. They fucks with it so hard, saying it's so delicious. And my kids have been dying to go, right? So me and my husband, we were like scratching our heads trying to figure out why everybody loves this trash ass organization and their trash ass food. I mean, literally, it will take you 30 minutes to get through the goddamn drive-through. Like,
Holy
that's
shit.
I don't understand what's going on. So we went in. First of all, the service is outstanding. When is the last time someone told you to have a lovely day? Well, I'll tell you, it was when I ate at Chick-fil-A this weekend. And I don't know if they've like changed their recipes or whatever, but the food is really fucking delicious. I mean, they have a cute little indoor playground, which I mean, if you're a mom and you're trying to like do something with your kids and like eat out without having people applaud when you leave the restaurant because your kids are so loud and obnoxious, you're like, oh God, a play place is great. The activist in me is like wildly ashamed that I ate there. But like the mom in me is like, that was pretty fucking dope. So the kid, I don't know. I still hate Chick-fil-A. I hate what they stand for. I don't even think they give, in terms of their health insurance, like they provide an option for birth control for their employees. Like they are so
I think
problematic.
they're one of those. Yeah.
So problematic. But Cully, I have 2 wild ass kids who love chicken tenders, and the food was good, and my kids fell asleep on the ride home, so it was like a godsend. So I don't know what to do with Chick-fil-A anymore in my heart or mind.
It's hard.
So anyway,
there's always those problems.
yeah, very problematic. But I do have to say, they have a play place. Moms who work, it's a good place to get dinner and get your kids tired. But don't support them for all the other bad reasons. Anyway, so now we are going to get into some listener. By the way, do you fucks with Chick-fil-A?
I don't. I refuse to go there. Yeah.
I do too. I mean, there's a lot of places that my kids are like, I want to go here, and I'm like, we can't eat at Papa John's, they're racist. Or like, we shouldn't go to Starbucks, they're racist. You know, like, so there's a lot of places that we're restricting ourselves from going to, or, you know, we haven't watched football. Like, we're trying to actively like boycott and protest and show that our dollars mean something, and people and companies should stand behind, companies that do good and treat people well.
Yes.
And Chick-fil-A isn't one of those companies, but anyway,
gotcha.
I'm just digging myself into a deeper hole. They got me. So anyway, let's just dive into these listener letters, shall we?
Where's the angels? We need some angels to take away the Chick-fil-A.
I feel better.
Thank you, angels. I do too.
Thank you, angels. Okay. So we got a very lovely email from Khadija. By the way, also my favorite character on the 1990s Black People primetime hit, Living Single. Did you watch that with Queen Latifah?
I didn't.
Oh boy, you're missing out.
I think it was probably the time when I didn't watch a whole lot of TV when my kids were little.
Oh, well, there was this period in the 90s where there was some fire-ass Black shows. Martin, There was what's that one? It was like a sketch show. Oh gosh.
Living Color.
In Living Color, and yes,
Yeah.
and Living Single, and woo, I would not miss an episode. So anyway, Khadijah, I love you. But she said, "Hello, dear ladies of Fruit Loops. Thank you for making me proud to be a Podbean patron. Oh my gosh, thank you, by the way, for being."
Yes, thank you so
Yes,
much.
thank you for being a patron of ours. Stay tuned because we're about to drop our bonus episode for our patrons. So anyway,
It took forever, sorry.
It took forever.
So
sorry. Forgive us. Your 2-part episode of The Dating Game Killer were awesome. Sorry that the following is an essay, but I had a lot of feelings. So here she goes. As a woman in the Boston area, it meant a lot to me that you'd mention the current case of Jassy Correa on your podcast and that you'd plug the GoFundMe page. If I'm not mistaken, she was a member of Boston Cape Verdean community. FYI, she said she's not a member, which has been victimized by authorities and the general population of Boston racists as being thugs, drug dealers, gang members, etc. Now, welcome to Culture Corner with Wendy and Beth. Boston has a pretty racist history. Just Google video news reactions of the people who were furious when the authorities forced them to have to segregate their schools. I mean,
wow.
The things these people said on TV. Whoa. Anyway, she goes on to say it surprised many people that her case even made the news, and many WOCs or women of color like me wonder if it's because there are 3 states involved in the investigation. The victim was from Massachusetts. The murder may have occurred in Massachusetts. The accused lives in and drove into Boston from Rhode Island, and her body was found in his car in Delaware. We know that many such crimes must be swept under the rug, but I'm glad that the world is forced to hear Jassy's story. Good. She also goes on to say, and other women of color, WOCs, I've talked to about this horrible tragedy realized that a huge reason that Jassy could, we can't assume, have been a victim is because of the expectations that men have on women in society, specifically at a club. I'm so glad she brought this point up. It's like if she's at the club, then she must want sex. If she flirts with a dude, it's almost like she must be willing to go home with him, or she's looked at negatively, like she's a tease. And if she and her friends try to make a pact to go together and leave together, her friends are seen as just by men as cock blockers. Men need to change. I don't think men want to accept that as long as they make it difficult for women to say no, they are putting women like Jassy at risk. They need to help themselves and each other rid this toxic idea that women at the club are there purely for men's enjoyment. What if Jassy thought, hey, whatever, he's cute, and denied any weird feeling she had because she didn't want to be a prude? Well, if that's the case, that's awful. So to sum it up, she said, a safety tip I have is to encourage men to cool it at the club. Amen. And act less shitty when a woman doesn't want to go home with them. To create a culture that doesn't allow for men to take advantage of women. Men need to talk to each other and call each other out. The time is now, she says.
Yeah.
All right, ladies, I'm done. I promise. Thank you so much. I love you both. Keep being amazing. XOXO, Khadijah. So thank you, Miss Khadijah, for the beautiful, awesome. Wonderful email.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome email.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So what do you got, Beth?
I just wanted to let our new patrons know that we ran out of stickers.
What a blessing, though, right? I mean, what a blessing to have run out, that people want them.
Yeah.
That's dope. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. I have ordered some more, but I'm still waiting to get them. So your packages have been delayed. I do apologize.
Yes, please forgive us, but they're coming and we love you.
But they're coming. They'll get there. They'll get there.
They'll get there. So before we get into our episode, we would like to say that this is a podcast about true crime and people of color. True crime is difficult to hear and talk about sometimes, and race can be the same way. But both are just part of the world that we live in. And we want this to be a safe space where we can have discussions about both. We are all learning all the time and hopefully trying to be our best sexy selves. Me and Beth may not get all the words right, and you at home listening may not get all the words right or say the most 2019 wokest terms, but at least we're trying. So
and that's okay.
That's okay.
We welcome our listeners to be a part of the conversation on Facebook or Twitter at Fruitloops Pod, or email us at fruitloopspod@gmail.com.
Okay, so now we're going to take a quick break and get into the story when we come back.
Hi, I'm Matt Harris. Seton Tucker and I host the podcast Impact of Influence, which for 2 years covered in depth Alec Murdaugh, who was eventually convicted in 2023 of murdering his wife Maggie and son Paul. That story continues to evolve, and we will cover that. Plus, we will tell you stories of other true crime events that have happened in the South. Please join us on Impact of Influence. And give us a follow on the Impact of Influence Facebook page.
My name is Bill Huffman, and I am a former Cleveland news producer, and I am now the host of the podcast, Who Killed? I began the show focusing on the unsolved murder of Amy Mahalovic, and now each week I explore a different case with a focus on some of the victims who don't get the attention they deserve. I have a deep catalog of over 225 episodes, so there is a guarantee there will be something for you. Who Killed is an evergreen podcast, killer podcasts, and slow burn media production. Subscribe today wherever you get your favorite shows.
All right, Beth. So, who are we talking about again?
Today we're talking about the DC sniper attacks, also known as the Beltway sniper attacks. And they were a series of coordinated shootings that occurred during 3 weeks in October of 2002 in the states of Maryland and Virginia and the District of Columbia. 10 people were killed and 3 others were critically wounded in the Baltimore-Washington metropolitan area and along Interstate 95 in Virginia. And we had mentioned more crimes earlier in our intro, and that's because there were some preliminary crimes as well. And I also wanted to say I was talking to my son about this case, and he said that gun people prefer to call these kinds of criminals long-distance serial killers rather than snipers, because sniper is a professional title given with respect, and they deserve none.
Oh, shout out to Beth's son. He's given us some notes before in the past. I mean, like on guns and stuff. Right. I don't know shit, and I really appreciate
nothing
that he's
about
giving
guns.
us this. Yeah. So I'm
Just
really
little
grateful to your
info.
son. I don't know if he listens to the show, but shout out to Beth's son. Thanks for the knowledge. And the Fruit Loops fam is happy about that. So let's get into some stats.
Woohoo.
Oh, all right. So February to October in 2002 is when these crimes took place. The DC snipers shot and killed 17 people across the country from Washington State to Arizona to Washington, D.C. The spree in the D.C. area lasted 23 days from October 2nd, 2002 to October 24th, 2002. Everyone who was killed was one bullet. Everybody got one bullet. 10 in the Beltway sniper attacks and 7 in the preliminary shootings. And they used a Bushmaster, I guess it's a type of a gun, and a rifle.
Yep.
So now we're going to get into the setting. So take it away, Beth.
Montgomery County in Washington, D.C. is a very affluent county in the DMV, which is D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, with very little crime. Obviously, D.C. is our nation's capital, and Alexander Hamilton convinced
I had a
Washington.
torrid affair, but he wrote it down right there. Highlights. That's my favorite part. Okay, sorry. Damn.
Damn.
Have you read this? Okay, what?
Anyway, so Hamilton convinced Washington to move the capital from New York to D.C. Washington, D.C. is a compact city on the Potomac River, bordering the states of Maryland and Virginia. There's too much history for us to even scratch the surface. The DMV does have a lot of Black people, and the reason for that is D.C. is very ethnically diverse. About 47% of the population is Black. Washington has had a significant African American population since the city's creation. Several neighborhoods are noted for their contributions to Black history and culture. Like numerous other border and northern cities in the first half of the 20th century, Washington received many Black migrants from the South in the Great Migration. African Americans moved north for better education and job opportunities, as well as to escape legal segregation and lynchings. Government growth during World War II provided economic opportunities for African Americans too.
In the post-war era, the percentage of African Americans in the city steadily increased as its total population declined as a result of suburbanation, supported by federal highway construction and white flight. We've talked about that before. That's when white people left all the neighborhoods because they were afraid Black people were going to ruin everything. Flee. Let's get out of here. The Black, yeah, but you know what? What's interesting is, okay, so there was a great migration of Black people moving north, in
right?
In the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Now, even a person like myself, I'm trying to flee racism. And there are people like me who are migrating back to the South. We have family connections there.
Right.
Family connections there. And those areas where there's so much history for us and some really thick, tight-knit Black communities where we can find safety and raise our kids there with good schools, the chance for our kids to have a Black teacher in their life for once.
Right.
So there's the opposite. It's trending backwards. So younger Black people are moving south,
back
looking for
into the
jobs
South.
in places, in places like Atlanta, Houston, Charlotte, North Carolina, Raleigh, those kinds of places. So anyway,
interesting.
Tangent. So, but back then, the Black population included a strong middle and upper class. John Allen Muhammad, the ringleader in our case, had an intense drive to, we will learn later in the story, kill his ex-wife. So she ended up, she relocated to the DC area to get away from Muhammad because she had family ties there. So now we are going to get into the killer's early life. So take it away, Beth.
John Allen Muhammad was born John Allen Williams in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to Ernest and Eva Williams, the fourth child of a Pullman train porter and an Antiguan immigrant. One of 6 children, he and his family moved to New Orleans when his mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. She died when he was 3 years old.
Oh, that's really sad.
It is.
Yeah, we will refer to John Allen Muhammad here on out as Muhammad, just to simplify things, but consider how easy it is to refer to him as a terrorist and a criminal because of his color and his last name. Just think about that note next time you watch the news. Moving on. After his mother's death, his father left, so Muhammad was mainly raised by his grandfather and an aunt, and it's been alleged that an uncle often beat him. He was described as a polite and well-liked individual.
In August of 1978, Muhammad enlisted in the Louisiana Army National Guard at Baton Rouge as a combat engineer. In 1981, he married his childhood sweetheart, Carol Caglier. In 1982, Muhammad was introduced to Mildred Green, by a friend in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Oh, sparks fly.
Mm-hmm.
Mildred was a beautiful young Black woman, but she says that she was deeply shy and naive and still lived at home with her mother. Having narrowly escaped being raped at 16, she was also very weary of men. Muhammad, on the other hand, was an outwardly confident National Guardsman with the ability to sweet talk any girl who caught his eye. I think Mildred was also in the service. I believe she said that. I actually heard her interviewed in a podcast. She said that they were both in the service. I also wanted to touch on Muhammad joining the service. And I learned from my Garifuna Central American grandmother's relatives. I was at her funeral around Christmas time, an older Garifuna Central American men, that they specifically chose the USA military for the opportunity and security it provided. Immigrants can join the military in our country. And many US born people of color and immigrant people of color take advantage of what the US military can offer them. It's an opportunity for a steady job, steady employment, just a better way economically. So,
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Mildred and John Allen Muhammad had been dating for several weeks before she learned that he was still married to his childhood sweetheart, Carol, by whom he had a son. Yeah. And they had a son named Lindbergh. But he assured her that they were on the verge of splitting up. And when he was posted to Washington State, to differentiate it from Washington, D.C.,
thank you.
Yeah. It's confusing, but it's a whole different state.
It can be.
So she agreed to wait for his divorce to come through and then travel north to join him.
By the way, my mom still lives in Washington State. I went to high school there. My parents got divorced. And then they got remarried to each other and decided to start a new life in Washington State. And basically, I haven't been back there since I graduated high school. And then I returned for my father's funeral. That's how much I hate the Pacific Northwest.
Wow.
I found it to be a very lonely place. It's very, very white. I felt it was very racist, and I actually never forgave. I never forgave Washington State for it, so that's why I just never went back. So my mom's like, she's like, Wendy, what are the kids doing this summer? Are they gonna come and visit us? Hell no. I love you, Mom. Just come here to Arizona. I'm not taking my kids there. Anyway, where were we? Okay. So they were married in March 1988. As the months and years passed, Mildred discovered her husband was not the contented, self-assured man that she thought him to be. For one thing, he was illiterate. So she had to teach him to read and help him bluff his way through military exams.
In 1991, he served in the Gulf War with a company that dismantled Iraqi chemical warfare rockets. While in the U.S. Army, Muhammad was trained as a mechanic, a truck driver, and a specialist metal worker. He qualified with the Army's standard rifle, the M16, earning the Expert Rifleman's Badge. This rating is the Army's highest of 3 levels of basic rifle marksmanship for a soldier. So pretty good.
So clearly he was a pretty smart, intelligent,
capable guy.
Skilled, capable guy. He had a varied Army career as a combat engineer, a specialty that involves everything from building roads and removing mines to repairing vehicles and setting up water supplies. A fellow soldier said Muhammad was considered a proficient mechanic, particularly on Abrams tanks and Bradley fighting vehicles.
Muhammad was honorably discharged from the Army on April 24, 1994, after 17 years of service with the rank of sergeant. For his service in the Army, Muhammad received the following awards: Army Service Medal, National Defense Service Medal, Overseas Ribbon, Non-Commissioned Officers Professional Development Ribbon, and Army Achievement Medal. Pretty good.
That's a lot of ribbons. Yeah, that's a lot of awards. Yeah, it's a lot of awards. Neighbors, and others who knew Muhammad in the 1990s described him as quiet and a disciplined man, a Muslim convert and auto mechanic who showed no sign of a violent streak. Bob Bianchi lived down the street from the family between 1994 and 2000 in comfortable Huapacio Estates, a community built around a natural lake in Tacoma. Tacoma.
That's
Bianchi,
the place, huh?
that's one of the places.
One of the
All right.
places.
Bianchi, Bianchi 47. But actually, Tacoma, I'll tell you one thing. So I was my high school's second Black varsity cheerleader in a 40-year
Ever.
and ever. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is, I'm not shy. So the high school I went to was in Spokane. So I was the second Black varsity. Spokane, Washington's on the east side, and Tacoma and Seattle are on the west side. And we would go to Tacoma a lot for like cheer competitions. And I remember just my mouth watering because I was so happy to see other Black cheerleaders, and they were all from Tacoma and Seattle. And I was like, oh my God, you guys have big butts and big thighs just like me and braids. Oh my God. So maybe if I had lived on the other side of the state, maybe I wouldn't feel so,
probably.
Yeah, maybe I wouldn't feel so salty about the state of Washington, but sorry, I didn't. So I do. So anyway, Bianchi 47 called him a very pleasant neighbor who remained kind of private over the years.
Hey, you called me private.
Do I need to be worried? Yeah, Private McPriverson's Beth here. Just found out where she lives.
All right. So Muhammad started up a mobile auto repair business, which he ran with the help of Mildred, who kept the books. And I understand at first they did really well.
Okay.
In addition, he operated a karate school with Felix Strozier. Strozier noticed that whenever Muhammad came into the room, his son, John Jr., would always come to attention military style, which indicated to him that Muhammad was a stern disciplinarian.
Yeah. And well, my dad was a Black man from the South, with Southern roots, and a military guy, and he expected us to do the same. So
right.
That's not too unusual, but wait,
not
it gets
unusual.
Worse. Yeah. John Allen and Mildred had converted to Islam together. While Muhammad saw religion as a means for peaceful social change, her husband was convinced that America's injustices could be overcome only by subversion and violence. In 1987, at the age of 27, he joined the Nation of Islam. In 2001, he changed his surname from Williams to Muhammad.
The Nation of Islam, also referred to as NOI, is an African American movement and organization that combines elements of traditional Islam with Black nationalist ideas and race-based theology. According to the Southern Poverty Law Center, an American nonprofit legal advocacy organization specializing in civil rights and public interest litigation, since its founding in 1930, the Nation of Islam, or NOI, has grown into one of the wealthiest and best-known organizations in Black America. Its theology of innate Black superiority over whites and the racist, anti-Semitic, and anti-LGBTQ rhetoric of its leaders have earned the NOI a position in the ranks of organized hate.
Yeah, and I've actually listened to interviews on podcasts of representatives from the Southern Poverty Law Center who say that the only reason, like they don't consider all the other things that the NOI does, just the fact that they are perceived to hate white people, so that's why they're perceived
Jews
as a hate
and
group.
gays
and Jews, right? Yeah, so they don't. So let me get into it. Okay.
Okay,
Welcome
you get
to
into
Culture Corner. Yeah, welcome to Culture Corner with Wendy and Beth. Get a pillow. The Nation of Islam, as Beth said, is a Black religious group, an American Black religious group. We have to remember that Islam is a religion of peace practiced by millions of people. The NOI was started by Elijah Muhammad in the 30s or 40s. And then in the 50s, Malcolm Little, aka Malcolm X, joined. And then let's not forget about Colin Kaepernick's predecessor, Cassius Clay, aka Muhammad Ali. The face of the group is Louis Farrakhan, and he is quite problematic. I do not disagree with anybody who says that. He is problematic for his positions on patriarchy, anti-Semitism, Black superiority over specifically white people. However, we also have to note the work that the NOI has done in trying to stabilize Black communities and stabilizing infrastructure, especially in communities that have been ravaged by white supremacy. They have a presence in prison, and their goal is to stabilize and support people within the prisons and also when they get out, giving them jobs and a place to go. They do have a Black superiority ideology. They are registered, as Beth said, as a hate group by the SPLC, but to Black people, it's really not that simple. Al Sharpton, Jim Brown, and Mr. Farrakhan and Jesse Jackson are the Black dudes that are called upon to be the voices of Black people in times and places where there was a traumatic event or strife or examples of Black oppression. And one of the things that the U.S. has done throughout history is systematically demonizing Black groups and Black leaders. The most recent one I can think of is Colin Kaepernick, or that
Right.
Waffle House, the dude at Waffle House who saved all those people, who was a Black dude. It's easy for the media and authorities to demonize anything Black, and so Black people understand the critiques of the NOI, but we also understand the good that they have done for Black lives. And given how complicated life is as a Black person in the United States, can accept the complexities for what they are in a way that maybe white America, aka trash ass Meghan McCain on The View a couple weeks ago towards Tamika Mallory can't understand. So if anybody is not familiar with that exchange, Google Tamika Mallory on The View, and you will see. I mean, Meghan McCain was just like, well, because Tamika Mallory was doing she was in charge of the Women's March, and Meghan McCain was trying to say like, well, you're not being very welcoming to conservative women. Conservative women want to be a part of this, and you ride with Louis Farrakhan. And Tamika was trying to explain what I just said. Like, it's really not that simple. Like, I denounce his views on hating anybody, but I also have to recognize that the organization has done a lot of really good things in the Black community, and Meghan McCain was just refusing to accept her answer.
That, yeah.
So allyship can exist through or between the Nation of Islam, women's groups, Jewish groups, LGBTQ groups, with empathy and solidarity. I really do believe that. Another thing, Black people have to compartmentalize all the time. And one of the examples I wanted to lay out to you was D.L. Hughley on a show the other day was asked, how do you continue to listen to Michael Jackson and R. Kelly's music after all the horrible things that they did? And, how can you sing these songs and after all the terrible shit that they did? And he was like, the same way I can sing the fucking national anthem.
Right.
There's different degrees and levels, and we just sort of have to maneuver our way as best we can without being we're all just trying not to be awful.
Yeah.
So Black people have to compartmentalize on a constant basis, and the way that Black people in general view the NOI is no different. So, oh boy, I'm so sorry that went so long. But
that's all right, and that's totally fair. I get that. The only issue I have with it is it makes race relations more difficult. When you're having
you're
somebody
right.
who's saying one race is superior to another, either way, there's pretty much no conversation after that. What are you going to
Well,
say?
but I think that younger progressives understand that we can have a conversation moving forward on we can take the good that the NOI has done and we can denounce the bad things that they have done, and we can sort of move the conversation using the good elements forward.
Yeah, I just think it's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate.
I just wish it wasn't part of it.
Yeah, you know what? I agree. I wish that those negative things were not a part of it as well.
Because I was just thinking about like the feminist movement. Feminists, just saying that women are equal to men. Like, we're not the same, but we should be treated equal. And that you had the militant feminists saying women are better than men. And then all of a sudden, feminist became a bad word. It just doesn't help.
Well, yeah, it doesn't help. But then you also had, Susan B. Anthony. I get excited when I find a Susan B. Anthony coin, but we can't forget that she was super racist. She said no black man is going to get a voting right before a woman. And the black feminists around her were like, hey sis, like what about us? And she was like, screw you guys. This is let's just get the white ladies first. Okay. So,
life is complicated is what it boils
really
down
is
to. Life is complicated.
Yeah.
There is no simple answer. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of looking at things in black and white, and it's not black and white. Life is complicated.
It isn't. It's very complicated. So we have to take the good where we can find it, I think. So,
yeah.
Where were we?
Back into the story. Okay. So, Muhammad had returned from the military with severe PTSD, and this affected his marriage with Mildred. He became abusive, unfaithful, and threatened to kill Mildred regularly. And by the late 1990s, their marriage was falling apart, and Mildred filed for divorce in 1999. When asked later why she didn't leave him sooner, she said that she was simply playing the role to which most Deep South Black girls were raised, that of a dutiful wife.
In February and March of 2000, Mildred filed domestic violence petitions against her estranged husband. A Pierce County judge granted her request for an uncontested permanent restraining order.
She complained of bizarre behavior, such as the morning Muhammad claimed that he had tapped her phones to destroy her. Another day, he forced his way into her house to see his son, John Jr., who was sick, prompting an emergency 911 call. The next day, he returned to the house. John came over to inform me that he will not let me raise our children. His demeanor is such that it is a threat to me, she wrote in a petition for order of protection. I am still fearful of him.
Yeah, she described in the podcast really chilling things, like he would break into her home and then just stand at the foot of her bed watching her sleep. And then she would wake up and he would be like, I'm going to kill you. But then he would leave.
Shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. God. What? So on a Sunday in March 2000, Muhammad took the 3 children for a weekend visit, telling his wife that he would keep them overnight and take them to school in the morning. Instead, he took the children and disappeared, taking $521 from the bank account and borrowing $1,100 from a business partner, leaving Mildred penniless.
Muhammad took his children to Antigua, where his mother was from. He changed the kids' names so that Mildred couldn't find them. There they lived in a hovel without running water, and Muhammad eked out a living by fixing documents for islanders who wanted to migrate illegally to the U.S. He also began a relationship with the mother of Lee Malvo.
So here's our second character, Lee Boyd Malvo. His name in formal documents, though he has sometimes been known as John Lee Malvo, was born on February 18th, 1985, in Kensington, Jamaica, to Leslie Malvo and Una James. He spent his early childhood in Jamaica. Me no no. A classmate described him as studious, polite, and well dressed, but said that he did not make any friends. Teachers remember him as a conscientious A grade pupil.
Around the year 2000, Malvo joined his mother Una James in Antigua, but Una soon left for Florida with Malvo, and Malvo attended Cypress Lake High School in Fort Myers, and Muhammad moved back to Washington with his children.
Meanwhile, Mildred was hiding in a women's refuge, distraught at losing her family and terrified of Muhammad. She continued to fight to find her children and get them back, but it would be 18 months before U.S. authorities traced the children when Muhammad attempted to claim child welfare in Washington. Now, she went all out. She hired a private investigator.
Wow.
She was working really hard to get these kids back.
Wow. So the children were reunited with their mother, and desperate to start a new life with her family, Mildred fled across the country with her children in September of 2001. She settled near her sister in the Maryland suburbs, just outside of Washington, D.C.
In October of 2001, Malvo left Florida and moved to Bellingham, Washington. Another place to join Muhammad. They lived together at the Lighthouse Mission, a Christian homeless shelter overlooking Puget Sound, about 130 miles north of Tacoma and 20 miles from the Canadian border. Muhammad told people Malvo was his son. Malvo's biological father, Leslie Malvo, a building contractor in Kingston, Jamaica, later called his son a nice kid, though he said he hadn't seen him for 4 years.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, and that kind of tells you what kind of relationship they had.
Right.
Not a very good one.
Nope.
In Bellingham, school officials were concerned that they had no records of Malvo's previous schooling and asked police to check into it. When a Bellingham police officer questioned Malvo on December 18th, Malvo said he was from Jamaica and was living at the shelter with his father. Muhammad was also in trouble for shoplifting, and the two disappeared before police could follow up.
From DNA testing to the Dixie Mafia, Crime Capsule brings you new stories of true crime in American history. I'm your host, Benjamin Morris. Join us for exclusive interviews with authors from Arcadia Publishing, writing the hottest books on the most chilling stories of our country's past. You can find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts or on evergreenpodcasts.com. Crime Capsule. History so interesting, it's criminal.
I want to take a moment to tell you about my podcast, Carol Costello Presents Blind Rage. In 1984, a woman named Phyllis Cottle was abducted in broad daylight, tortured, and left to die in a burning car in Akron, Ohio. At the time, I was a rookie reporter covering this horrific story. Since then, I've reported every kind of crime imaginable. I've been able to leave most of them at work, but not this one, the one that buried itself under my skin and stayed put. Phyllis Cottle was a badass woman, and I want to tell you her story. A production of Evergreen Podcasts and signature title of the Killer Podcast Network, you can find Carol Costello Presents Blind Rage wherever you get your podcasts. Discover more great true crime and paranormal programming at killerpodcast.com.
Okay, so now we're going to get into the juicy timeline. So, before the shooting, which have been referred to as the DC sniper attacks, Muhammad and Malvo committed similar crimes across the country that were not linked until way later. These have been referred to as the preliminary crimes, quote unquote.
On February 16th, 2002, 21-year-old Kenya Cook was shot and killed at the front door of her aunt's home in Tacoma, Washington. Cook's aunt, Isla Nichols, had been good friends with John Allen Muhammad's ex-wife Mildred and had encouraged her to seek a divorce. There is circumstantial but not ballistic evidence that the killer was Lee Malvo.
On March 19, 2002, Jerry Taylor, 60 years old, was killed by a single shot to the chest fired from long range as he practiced chip shots at a Tucson, Arizona golf course. Muhammad's sister lived near the golf course, and he was visiting her during the shooting.
On August 1st, 2002, John Gaeta, 51, was changing a tire at a parking lot in Hammond, Louisiana, and was shot in the neck. The bullet exited through Gaeta's back, and he pretended to be dead while the shooter stole his wallet. He survived.
Woo! That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, not that he got shot, but that he survived.
He did survive, yeah.
On September, I don't know why I'm laughing. Sorry.
I don't either. Inappropriate laughter.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Guilty. On September 5th, 2002 at 10:30 p.m., Paula LaRufa, a 55-year-old pizzeria owner, was shot 6 times at close range while locking up his Italian restaurant in Clinton, Maryland. LaRufa survived the shooting. Wow. And his laptop computer was found in John Allen Muhammad's car when he and Malvo were arrested.
Wow. On September 11th, Muhammad and another man, Nathaniel Osborne, purchased a blue 1990 Chevrolet Caprice with 147 miles from Sure Shot Auto Sales Incorporated in Trenton, New Jersey. They paid $250 for the car. That is a cheap car.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Shout out to bargain shopping. September 14, 2002, Benny Oberoi, 22, was shot and wounded outside the Hillendale Beer and Wine Store in Silver Spring, Maryland. The shooting is linked by circumstances, witnesses, and location of the alleged snipers, but not ballistics. On September 15th, 2002, Muhammad Rashid was injured in a shooting at a Brandywine, Maryland liquor store.
On September 21st, 2002 at 12:15 a.m., 41-year-old Million A. Woldemariam was fatally shot in the head and back with a .22 caliber pistol in Atlanta, Georgia. Woldemariam was helping the owner of a Sammy's package store close up for the night when the shooting occurred. Police found a fingerprint on a weapon magazine in the parking lot. I have 2 things to say here.
Tell me.
First of all, do you know about package stores?
No, I assumed it was like a dollar store or a Walmart.
Nope. On the East Coast, liquor stores are called package stores.
What?
Yeah. When I lived in Connecticut, you had to go to the package store to buy liquor. They did not have liquor in the grocery store. So you had to go to a separate store to buy it, and they were called package stores. I don't know why. We called them packies.
Packies. Wait.
Go
So
to
are
the
package
packy.
stores just liquor stores, or can you get other things there?
Just liquor, alcohol, beer.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just a liquor store.
Okay. Okay. Oh,
However you do that.
Pretty good. Pretty
And
good. By the way, I was going to say, I've been doing that at work lately. So shout out to not being professional. But there's this like straight edge white dude who I think used to even be a cop who like is all about like, and he watches Blackish. You know what I'm talking about?
I do. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, I like him.
He was so into it. Yeah, I like him too. Anyway, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Packies.
So
the
first thing is about the package store. Yeah, they're just liquor stores.
Yeah.
And then the second thing was how police found a fingerprint on a weapon magazine in the parking lot. That's a cartridge for a weapon, right? For the gun.
Yes.
And I read in one article that it was a page from a weapons magazine. Like Malvo sitting
Wait a
out there
minute.
reading a
Like
magazine
reading
about weapons.
Oh my God. So the publication clearly got it wrong.
Yeah, they're like, what?
He's reading magazines in
He's
front
just
of
sitting out there
in front of his
reading.
like reading and committing crimes.
Yep, that's what
What
he's
the
doing.
fuck? Get out of here. You know
That
what?
was hilarious.
You know what? Get the fuck out of here. My buttons aren't working. Come on. Oh my God. Hang on.
There you go.
Okay. So that's complete fuckery on that. Yeah. On that publication's part.
I thought it was hilarious.
Oh, this has been fun. Okay, so what's next? Oh, here we go. Okay, so 19 hours later, on the same day, Claudine Parker, a 52-year-old liquor store clerk in Montgomery, Alabama, was shot in the chest and killed during a robbery. Her co-worker, a 24-year-old Kelly Adams, was critically wounded with a shot through the neck, but survived. Oh, yes, amen. Later, ballistics are a match to a Bushmaster .223 rifle, and eyewitness accounts link the DC snipers. There we go. We got them.
We got it. On September 23, 2002 at 6:30 p.m., 45-year-old Hong M. Ballinger was shot in the head and killed with a Bushmaster rifle in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Muhammad and Malvo were later linked to the killing.
So what we see now is the killers are making their way across the United States. Now we are going to get into the DC sniper attack specifically. This is when the authorities realized that they had a killer on the loose. So take it away, Beth.
So the first sniper attack occurred on October 2nd, 2002 at 5:20 p.m. when a shot was fired through the window of a Michael's Crafts store in Aspen Hill. The bullet narrowly missed Ann Chapman, a cashier at the store. Since no one was injured, no serious alarms were raised. However, approximately 1 hour later at 6:30 p.m., James Martin, a 55-year-old program analyst at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, was shot and killed in the parking lot of a Shoppers Food Warehouse grocery store in Wheaton.
On the morning of October 3rd, 4 people were shot dead within a span of approximately 2 hours in Aspen Hill and other nearby areas in Montgomery County. Another was killed that evening in the Tacoma neighborhood of the District of Columbia. Not Tacoma, Washington, but in the neighborhood of District Columbia.
It's confusing, but yeah.
Just to be clear, yeah. So, at 7:41 a.m., James L. Buchanan, a 39-year-old landscaper known as Sonny, was shot dead near Rockville, Maryland. Buchanan was shot while moving the grass at the Fitzgerald Auto Mills. Let me see that sentence. Let me see the whole thing again. Okay.
He was moving the grass.
I don't know.
Just
some
moving
activities white people do. I don't know. So
I don't know. White people, they're funny.
I don't know. White people are funny and they do weird things. I don't know. My husband, my old whitey's out here like blowing leaves. Why?
He's moving
Why
the leaves.
Are you doing that? He's moving the leaves. Whatever. Okay. Anyway, and digging holes and stuff. I don't know. Anyway. Okay, so at 7:41 a.m., James L. Buchanan, a 39-year-old landscaper known as Sonny, was shot dead near Rockville, Maryland. Buchanan was shot while mowing the grass at the Fitzgerald Auto Malls. At 8:12 a.m., 54-year-old part-time taxi driver Prem Kumar Walekar was killed in Aspen Hill in Montgomery County while pumping his gas in his taxi at a Mobile station.
At 8:37 p.m., Sarah Ramos, a 34-year-old babysitter and housekeeper, was killed at the Leisure World Shopping Center in Norbeck as she was sitting on a bench reading a book.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. That's sad. At 9:58 a.m., in what was to be the last killing that morning, 25-year-old Lori Ann Lewis Rivera was killed while vacuuming her Dodge Caravan at a Shell station in Kensington, Maryland.
Oh, no.
Yeah, these are all sad.
Yeah, very much so.
The snipers then waited until 9:20 p.m. before shooting Pascal Charlotte, a 72-year-old retired carpenter, while he was walking on Georgia Avenue at Kalmia Road in Washington, D.C. Charlotte died less than an hour later.
In each shooting, the victims were killed by a single bullet fired from the same distance, and in each case, the killer struck and then vanished. Fear quickly spread throughout the region as news of the shooting spread. Local residents, frightened by the seemingly random nature of the shootings, which crossed racial, gender, and even, we'll learn, age, because they shot a 13-year-old boy who lived, which was good, and socioeconomic lines, crouched behind their cars while pumping gas and avoided outdoor activities. So schools held recess indoors and sports teams canceled outdoor practices.
The killers also left a series of cryptic clues at crime scenes, including tarot cards and notes, and they even called the police hotline, apparently trying to engage investigators in a dialogue.
Yeah, but they hung up on them. So that is where we're going to leave it today. That's the end of it for this episode. Tune in next week for the rest of the story.
Hey, podcast listeners, I'm Paul Brandis introducing my podcast, Countdown to Dallas. It's a fascinating, in-depth look at the seemingly unconnected events that led to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. It's based on my book of the same title. In that book and in this podcast, I go all the way back to 1939, when Lee Harvey Oswald was born into a troubled and dysfunctional family. I'll follow his transient and often violent teenage years and young adulthood, painting a fuller picture of the man who would later become Kennedy's killer. I also take a look at events unfolding in that era, like Cuba and Vietnam, and I'll unpack the conspiracy theories too, not one of which has ever been conclusively proven. Subscribe to Countdown to Dallas at evergreenpodcasts.com or your favorite listening app, October 31st.
So, if you love true crime and you don't want to die, here's a tip for you. Hey, hey, hey.
Oh, I like it.
Doing drugs. I'm just kidding. I'm done. Sorry.
This segment is not intended to be victim blaming. We thought of this segment because I read somewhere that a lot of people listen to true crime because they want to know what they can do to be safer. But in my mind, this is not meant to blame the victims. It's just learning from other people's mistakes. Sometimes we have no suggestions for a particular episode and we'll just offer up generic tips. What do you got, Wendy?
Okay, so this is a full lineup of tips. So please get your pencils out. Keep your head on a swivel. Pay attention to the news. If authorities are out here saying it's not safe to be out, don't be out. Listen to them. Identify safe havens you can retreat to in the event of a terror attack. I guess that's just something I
always keep it in the
unfortunately
back
we all
of your
have to
mind.
sort of be thinking about. Yeah. Be aware of where police stations are, hotels, hospitals, places where you can go in the event that you need to get a good night's rest, in the event you need to evacuate or contact authorities or seek medical care wherever you are, on vacation or at home. Use caution around religious holidays. Many religiously motivated terrorists schedule large attacks to coincide with their religious holidays. So exercise, I got this from the internet. So this is not coming from me. This is just a tip I found. Exercise extra vigilance during these times. And if possible, avoid public areas. Again, if possible. And keep an eye out for shifty people. Lastly, I have a theory about saving the world, and I'm going to do it in this podcast. Be kind and treat people with dignity. Don't hate on people who speak a different language or who have a different skin color, accent, or religion, or dress differently than you. I heard on one podcast about the conflict in the Middle East recently that mentioned that every single time they engaged in these peace talks, they always failed. And the reason was because the agreements lacked an element of dignity for each side. So it's probably oversimplifying, could be, but what would happen to the bully who showed love in high school, or the Muslim kid who you decided to sit with at lunch one day because nobody else wanted to because they were afraid or didn't know any better? There's power in kindness, love, and dignity. That's something serial killers are not shown in their younger days or adult lives. And we know what happens. So,
yeah. Yeah, so building off of that, there's an article that was written last year about what to do if you witness Islamophobic harassment. And I think it applies to harassment of anyone. And this is not a tip of how not to get murdered, but how to help other people not get murdered.
Oh, yes, let's do it.
So they're talking about verbal harassment. If someone is physically attacking another person, call 911. Or as my daughter says, call 911 whistle. So this strategy is based on something called non-complementary behavior, a concept in psychology which aims to disrupt an oppressive connection a potential attacker is attempting to establish with the target. We'll link the article in the show notes, but here are the basic guidelines. So talk to the victim, ignore the attacker. Basically, go over to the victim, sit down, and start talking. Talk about something random, like, did you see the Transformers movie? Or, whatever you can think of. I like your scarf, whatever you can think of.
Yeah.
Just something random.
When are
just
we getting
engage.
our nails done together?
Yes. Just start engaging them in conversation. Continue to engage the person in conversation, building a safe space as you ignore the attacker. Do not talk to the attacker because once you engage with the attacker, it's just going to escalate. So just talk to the person who's being attacked, like you're just having a conversation. Stay with them until the attacker leaves, and then escort them to a neutral area.
I love this tip. There, not too long ago, was an incident on, I believe, a train where a white nationalist hate mongrel attacked he ended up killing these women of color.
Oh my God.
I think they were in hijab, and he had a knife. He had weapons, so it might have been really difficult for somebody to step in
to
just because of fear, right? Of getting hurt. Yeah, to do something like that. But in the event there maybe are no weapons, I really like these tips. I also think this is something we could teach maybe our kids to do. Like if you see somebody bullied, just go up to
sit by them and start talking.
Yeah. Hey, bro, you cool? You want my peanut butter and jelly? Oh, turns out I got 2 pieces. I don't know. I just think this is something we need to exercise and continue to exercise. And especially, you're right. This was
totally
a
agree.
Great tip.
Yeah.
Thank you, Beth.
Yeah.
Thank you. So now we're going to get into some serial killer and crime news. Take it away, Beth.
So the crime news that I have today, I touched on a little bit earlier, the college admissions bribery scandal. So this might seem like just a goofy story, and we all feel a little schadenfreude at seeing these rich people getting arrested. But it really illustrates the deep racial and economic disparities in our country.
Boy, does it ever.
Yeah. And there are people of color getting jail time just for listing a relative's address as their own to get their kids into a decent public school so that they can get a basic education.
Amen.
And here's these rich, mostly white folks bribing their kids' way into Ivy League colleges. I don't know for sure, but I bet they will get very little, if any, jail time. It's infuriating.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
My inner black Tyrone is furious.
Anyway, there's an episode on The Daily, which is a New York Times podcast on this story, and it's really good. They talk about all the implications, and I don't think they talked about the aspect that there are parents who are in jail for listing their relative's address as their own. I don't think they got into that, but they talk about.
They did not. I listened to the Daily. They did not mention that.
Yeah, they didn't mention that, but they talked about why these parents did this, and they talked about the disparities, and it was pretty good. It didn't cover everything, but it was pretty good. So we'll link that in the show notes.
We will. If you do want to know more about this mother, these kinds of Black mothers' stories who used the fake addresses in order to get their kids to go to a well-performing school.
Which is really common. People do it all the fucking time.
People do it all the time.
White people do it too.
Yeah. Yes, everybody does it because don't we all want the best for.
We just want our kids to have a good education.
What we kind of have in common with rich people is we all do want the best for our kids. It's just we don't always get we don't have the same means to go about it. So we have to just do the best with what we got. There is a documentary about lying. And it's on Netflix. I want to say it's Why We Lie or the History of Lying. It might be a Freakonomics documentary. I'm gonna figure it out, and then I'll link it in the show notes. But they interview one of these moms who did I think she did 5 years in federal prison for doing the fake address thing to get her kids into a better school.
That is such bullshit. It's infuriating.
Yeah. It is. The documentary's angle is about how people lie and why people lie. So it doesn't really get into the race thing very much, or the college scandal at all. But I think it's worth looking at. I mean, I was aware of this happening before the news story broke. This is not the first time that people have committed fraud in order to get their kids ahead.
Yeah.
And I am just looking forward to see if justice will be weighted equally towards
it won't.
Felicity Huffman and Becky. It won't. I know it won't, but
just
maybe,
interested to see what happens. Yeah, let's see what happens.
Yeah, there's also somebody shared in our Facebook group a homeless Black woman who wanted her kids to go to any school and just used an address, I think, of a business or something, and she went to jail too.
Holy shit.
So, things aren't looking so great. Betsy DeVos, where you at? Are you going to help us out with this?
No, she's not. She don't give a shit.
She might be busy doing other things. I don't know. But anybody who knows Betsy DeVos, maybe ask her what she thinks
promoting
about this.
charter schools.
But look, I can't hate on charter schools either. Because as a I'm going to say maybe middle class. I'm not poor. I'm not destitute. We's all right over here in the Wendy Williams house. We's are going to be all right. But my kids do go to a charter school because the school up the street is very low performing.
Yeah.
And now, so we're sort of.
Well, do you know why it's low performing?
Yeah,
because there's so many damn charter schools.
There's so many charter schools,
and that's where the money goes.
That's where the money goes. But the charter school thing felt really good when we first started it, but it doesn't feel very good anymore. We're actually going to take our kids out of this school. Because remember, I think I told you my kid was called the N-word.
Yep.
And we gave them all these resources to try to turn this into.
And they didn't do anything.
Nobody's done it. Nobody has done anything.
Not surprised.
And then my kid keeps getting into trouble. And I've talked about this before. Kids of color in general, especially when they have a white teacher, anything that they do is like
they get in trouble for
perceived as violent or improper behavior.
Troublemakers.
So my son gets in trouble a lot, and it drives me fucking nuts. And So we are going to, our plan is to get my kids out of this charter school that we thought was so great in the beginning and send them to the public school that's in our neighborhood. Now, the reason why I'm comfortable with this is we have the resources so that if education wise, my son may not be getting all of what he needs in this public school that we're paying taxes for. We have the resources. We pay for tutoring 2 hours a day, 4 days a week for him. So we have the means to get him the extra resources so that he can succeed. And eventually all of the resources we're throwing at him will benefit the school and the kids around him. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, charter schools make me mad too.
Like, just like the Chick-fil-A thing, it's complicated. Yeah.
Just like the Chick-fil-A, it's complicated. So, anyway, hashtag Chick-fil-A. Okay, so now we're going to move into the part of our show where we shout out any content by people of color, any marginalized groups, LGBTQ people, people of color, or any true crime goodies. So you go ahead, Beth.
So I'm just going to shout out an article that I read recently called How Inuit Parents Teach Kids to Control Their Anger. I'm always interested in how other cultures do things because I believe that we can always learn new things from them, other cultures. And so anyway, Inuits don't use corporal punishment. They don't use timeouts or scolding. None of that.
What?
Yeah, they have a philosophy that when a child is acting out, they're upset about something and it's up to you to figure out what it is. And when you yell at children, you're just teaching them to be angry. And also they feel like when you're yelling, you're acting like a child. You're being very childish.
Okay.
And also parents who control their own anger are helping their children learn to do the same because kids learn emotional regulation from us, their parents. So Inuits use storytelling to keep their kids in line. Reading the article, I don't know about the stories they tell because they seem kind of scary about monsters in the ocean and stuff. Oh
God.
But I did do something similar with my kids, although I can't say I didn't yell and that I didn't lose my temper because I did.
It's difficult. You're a single mom. Come on. You did the damn thing, okay?
But I did tell them what could happen if they did something. Like if you run into the street, you might get hit by a car, that kind of thing. Just relaying possible consequences of their actions so that they can understand rather than just telling them they can't do something or punishing them for disobeying without telling them why. And I think that's what they're getting at in the article was
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I do that with my kids. Like if my kids want to meet a new dog that they haven't met before or they don't know, I will say, would you like to see pictures of what happens to a kid's face on Google Images if they meet a dog that they don't know? Or would you like to see images of a skin disease if you touch something that you shouldn't or don't wash your hands? Or would you like to see images like Google Images is like the Inuit
it's a nightmare, man. It's a nightmare for sure.
And my kids, they always say no and then they be good. It's great.
Yeah. Well, just knowing what the consequences could be, just understanding that there's consequences to everything that you do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to see a video of I could go on. Like there's no point in getting mad. Do you want to see the Google video? I'll just show you right now.
So there was also a recent This American Life episode called Unconditional Love. One of the segments was about a kid who was adopted from a Romanian orphanage, and it was about the difficulties that the family had in dealing with this kid because he had an attachment disorder. Basically, both of these stories talked a lot about giving children love and how love helps kids form healthy emotional lives. And we talk a lot about serial killers and how they're deeply flawed human beings with anger and other emotional issues. So I thought it applied.
Yeah.
Basically, give your kids lots of love, folks. And that's it.
I thank you so much, Beth. You know what? Wait a minute. What's that?
Yes, give your kids lots of love.
Yeah, lots of love. Lots of love. So thank you, Beth. That was an awesome rec. Thank you so much. So hey guys, it's been fun. But where can the people find us?
Our website is fruitloopspod.com. Our Facebook page is Fruit Loops Pod, and our discussion group is Fruit Loops Pod Discussion on Facebook. We are also on Twitter and Instagram at Fruit Loops Pod, and links to our sources will be in our footnotes. If you want to support the show, you can send us a donation on the Cash App, which you can download to your phone, or you can find online at cash.me/$ Fruit Loops Pod, or you can become a monthly patron through our Podbean patron page. This will help us pay for things like our website and pod hosting. There's no minimum and no commitment. Even $1 would help.
That is correct. This is a weekly podcast, and new episodes drop every Thursday. So until next time, look alive, guys. It's crazy out there. All right, that's it for today. We thank you all for your support, grace, and love. Beth, Minnie, and I will be back soon with new Fire Ass episodes for your ear holes. In the meantime, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay connected with us on all the socials at Fruit Loops Pod. Send us a voice memo or a voice note, or just say hi somewhere on the internet. And as always, look alive, y'all. It's crazy out there.
Something is creeping. Don't follow it down.
Let me introduce you to Barry Clew, an authorised financial advisor from New Zealand and a very special kind of stain on humanity.
He was a very knowledgeable young guy.
He was a registered financial advisor.
Type of guy that was bending over backwards to help you.
Now, you could be forgiven for thinking that Barry sounds like a great guy, and you'd be right. Well, right up until the point when you're wrong.
It was all fictitious.
You stole from my son who has a disability.
Chris never knew. He died believing that we're all taken care of.
A psychopath is somebody who lacks empathy, acts impulsively. I think there's a strong case that Barry might be all of those things, actually.
To find out how Barry Clew stole over $15 million from 81 victims, subscribe to Clueless, The Long Con. That's Clueless, spelt KLOOGHLESS.
24 hours ago, I found out the person that I'd been dating and seeing for the last 6 months as a con man.
That is my sister Emma. Andrew Tonks's lies had been so convincing, she'd invested $300,000 with him. However, the tables were about to turn on Andrew. What he didn't know was that Emma had discovered his real identity. But to get any chance of justice, Emma had to act like it was business as usual. Coming up in this series,
and that's when murder, all this stuff goes through my mind. I'm really, really scared.
I'm assuming Sarah has watched too much Netflix and figures I've been defrauding you. Couldn't be further from the truth.
That's what this was, a real-life story that seems so unbelievable, but it was actually true.
A true story that all starts with one simple swipe to the right. I'm Sarah Ferris.
And I'm Emma Ferris, and this is my story, Conning the Con.